Welcome, everybody. This is Circus Maximus, and I'm your host, Nick Spero. And it is August 19th, 2016. Welcome to Renegade Broadcasting. Tonight, I have a man called Chris Dorsey. Welcome back to Renegade.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor and a pleasure to be on with you, Nick. I really appreciate it.
I actually wanted to have you on much sooner, but Kyle beat me to the punch. So I wanted to have a little space in between inviting you back onto the network. It's a pleasure having you on, and there's so much to talk about. You've put out so many different videos since the last time you were on Renegade. I'd like to get into some of those that you've put out recently. I know that you were at a Black Lives Matter event in Virginia, and could you talk about that incident and how that went?
Yes, absolutely. So basically, we just have our antenna up around here. When we take action, as I said, I'm called Chris Dorsey, and under the law, I'm a man, and I'm one of the people. So, you know, we have an intelligence network here, and we operate under the laws of the Constitution for Virginia, which states that the militia is the number one law enforcement and military arm. So we have an intelligence arm. So we're watching the criminals that run the United States government and all of their military mind war actions. And we found out that there was a Black Lives Matter rally, and that was in corroboration with, obviously, the police were directing it, and this was Department of Homeland Security, and of course George Soros funded it. But it was also involving the SEIU, which is the largest trade union in the United States. And basically, it was a rally and a march down Monument Avenue, which is known for the monuments to Confederate war heroes. And it was a Black Lives Matter march, and the event and rally took place at the base of the monument for Robert E. Lee. So we know that George Soros funds this Black Lives Matter movement, and it goes even beyond George Soros because there's, an entire intelligence apparatus and going down to even the minutia of blocking off streets and giving overtime to the police officers who are directing all of these events. It was a stage psyop. Obviously, we know that they're pushing this race war agenda, and they're demoralizing the American people in general, but specifically European Americans, and demonizing them. And this was a complete Bolshevik operation, and the videos show a lot more because basically we're going and confronting the individuals who are federal, city, and state government officials who have been, we've known, I would say, speaking for myself, since I got involved with this sort of deep level politics in 2001, 2002. It's the same folks over and over again. Federal Reserve Bank Police of Richmond, Virginia State Capitol Police, Department of Homeland Security, Secret Service. And these are some of the folks that were directing the Occupy movement. And I'm talking about the worldwide Occupy movement when I talk in specifics about those agencies I just named. It's well beyond them, Army intelligence included, but that they go into great detail, and they have crisis actors out there. There's employees of G4S Security, which was located less than a mile away from where this event took place, and we saw some scary stuff out there too, like those FEMA buses. They were out there, and I mean, it was an event that had lots of different components and lots of different individuals, but it was a lot of the same operatives that are funded by the Tides Foundation, the Rockefeller Family Fund, have ties to the Workers' World Party, international communism, and they're pushing, obviously, the Zionist, Marxist, Bolshevik agenda.
You also had a chief of police pointing at you and kind of not brandishing his firearm, but kind of like tapping at it and kind of harassing you and egging you on a little bit, huh?
Well, that's a guy called Alfred Durham, and he came from Washington, D.C. He's FBI agent, United States Marine Corps. So a lot of these things obviously this is really the only place folks like you and I can talk, because the audience is sophisticated enough to get these references when we can talk about references to, every police officer in the United States over the rank of a sergeant has been trained by, the FBI in Northern Virginia, Quantico. And these guys are all federalized. And Durham, basically, he's a criminal and he's called out for his crimes. And when I go on, sometimes I'll go on Press TV and I'll call him out personally when I start talking about the criminal police, the occupying army in the United States that is the stormtroopers for the Zionist occupied government, and that's what is called the police, the city, state, federal police, and so-called law enforcement, who do nothing but violate the law. But Durham has been instrumental in the past in attempts on my life, multiple abductions, and when I catch him doing this sort of thing, the individuals who call him chief, erasing the video and leaving a footprint and all covering them up. He's just kind of a pawn of obviously we know that somebody like him can be nothing but a pawn to the real power, to the bar association muckety mucks here in the capital, Virginia, or the billionaires. But he basically is one of their armed leaders. And he belongs in jail. And yeah, of course, he's threatened to kill me. They've abducted me. They've disappeared me. That's been I shouldn't say widely covered, because it wasn't widely covered, but my abduction last year, and that was a part of the Jade Helm operation, was covered by the media. It happened. It was covered up, and it's pretty shocking. Basically, all I can do at this point is videotape everything and call these folks out when they're doing it, because we can't back down. Folks like Alfred Durham, I put that out on video, and several days later, I get a knock on my door, and the Richmond police are making some sort of statement, because obviously they can't make anything but false statements, that I'm threatening this guy, Alfred Durham. And that's basically how it goes. These criminal police and government agents carry out terrorist activities, assaults, you name it. I mean, I could go down the list, but we don't have time to go into all that stuff now.
Chris, I've had an incident before where I was picking up my daughter and with my wife at the time, and I had a warrant for my arrest. What the warrant was for, I had a Good Humor ice cream truck business. I had 10 trucks, whatever. And I was personally driving a truck one night, and I was selling ice cream beyond 8 o'clock. I had my amplified music, your common ice cream truck music, sure, and and I did not have a garbage can in my truck. So I was written like 7 citations, went to court, had all of them but 3 dropped. And I believe I mentioned the 3 that I ended up getting convicted on. They were all city ordinances. I paid the fine over at the circuit clerk before the court date. So I assumed that I didn't have to go to the court date since I paid the fine ahead of time. And I was driving down a country road, was followed for almost a couple miles before they finally caught up with me. They must have used a license plate reader and finally found information about my warrant and decided to pursue me 10 minutes later. And they caught up with me. And a second squad came. The female cop brought me to the back of the car. I was arrested, cuffed, the male officer getting aggressive, threw my baseball cap onto the car, grabbed my arm and pulled my arm and pulled my shoulder at the same time to where I actually ended up separating my shoulder. And I kept pulling my arm away because he was trying to hurt me. And he ended up pepper spraying me, his partner, my wife, and my wife ended up getting arrested as well for obstruction of justice. Everything ended up getting dropped later because they had it on camera. So I ended up, I didn't even go to court. Thought I was going to have a warrant, never ended up having a warrant. They just dismissed the whole case anyway. So yeah, I know what it's like to be abused by police myself. So with this chief of police that you've been having issues with and abductions and harassment and violence and threats, you also mentioned that there was a staged false flag that I kind of skimmed over and didn't even think of it, that Greyhound incident over in Virginia on April 1st of this year. Can you talk a little bit about how you exposed that to where that created a lot of hostility in your community?
Well, yeah, I think maybe we can talk about that in terms of patterns. When we see these patterns in these false, and I don't want to get in, they say, oh, if somebody says it's a false flag, oh, it's not a false flag, it's a hoax. Okay, so I'll say orchestrated, staged events, by the government.
Sure.
So to be clear, so obviously I got a heads up that there was a alleged shooting at the Richmond Greyhound bus station, and the first reports were, of course, there was a live drill going on, and then varying different reports started coming out. So again, when we start talking about the staged hoax pattern, number one, of course, that we catch on is initial reports and subsequent reports being contradictory and continuously changing.
Yes.
And so we started noticing them. So basically I just was like, yep, the vehicle is, needs a little repair. So I just jumped on my bike, borrowed a camera from one of my associates, Glenn, and rode the bike down there and knew that it would be very easy to show that this was a complete hoax and fake. And I just want to point this out. I am always speaking to another individual smarter than myself. And tonight I get a rare opportunity to say it much smarter on a lot of different levels, but on at least one level, I'm always, when I'm talking to those cops, I mean, they're smarter than me in their particular protocol of what they have to do to violate the law, violate the civil rights, violate their oath to uphold the Constitution. So basically, it's easy to figure these guys out. All you have to do is assert one's authority. One has to just assert their authority as a man. And one of the people, it's good to be carrying a firearm, which I usually am carrying a firearm. And I point a camera at these guys and I interrogate them. And when I interrogated individuals down there about, and I do this to the media as well. And that's what I did. I went down and I interrogated the media and I interrogated the police on the scene about the incident, asking them basic, simple questions like, did this really happen? And I want to point out that what is alleged to have happened is allegedly during a live drill, which closed down part of the city of Richmond, and that was the Greyhound bus station. Across the street from the Greyhound bus station is the minor league baseball stadium, which was also a staging area for not only the police, but the media. And they had closed the street off the night before this happened, which was March 31st, 2016. So March 30th, the police had closed down that section of the boulevard in Richmond, Virginia, where this incident took place. And this was part of a staged drill. And I've about 30 pages of what this drill started off as, and it was a drill put on by the Virginia State Police and the Joint Terrorism Task Force, operating out of what they call the Fusion Center, which is about a mile and a half away from my house. And basically they made up a false scenario to begin the drill. And the false scenario was that there was a interdiction on a quote unquote China bus from New York to South Carolina. This is the basis of the drill I'm talking about right now, and that the interdiction resulted in a seizure of 12 pounds of cocaine. And of course, the whole thing was just false. That scenario never took place, but this was the drill. And also, so what happened during the drill, allegedly, is after the drill was over, after the training exercise was over, and I have all the details of what's been allowed to be made public about the training exercise. I've required that I, filed lawfully to get the alleged footage of the shooting, and they've not released that at all. And they said that they won't release it or any other information other than what they've given me. And this false scenario resulted in a Joint Terrorism Task Force officer and Virginia State Police officer, also a Marine veteran, allegedly named Chad Durmeyer, approaching an individual named James Brown III. Again, the color and number sequence, James Brown. And they say he's from Aurora, Illinois, kind of like James Holmes from Aurora, Colorado.
Yes.
And during this live drill, allegedly, James Brown, for no reason at all, shot a uniformed Chad Durmeyer. And this was big news, and many reported on it. But pretty much right off the bat, there were a number of us that called it out as a hoax and kind of called it for what it was. And then that started forwarding this larger psyop. And I want to point out another interesting thing about this event. There was the founder, this alleged founder, we know George Soros is the founder of Black Lives Matter, but the alleged founder of Black Lives Matter was speaking less than 2 miles away from this incident that happened later on that night.
Wow.
So these things are obvious. And basically the questions that we asked them is we asked the media, what proof do you have that any of this stuff happened? And why do you keep changing your story? And why do you believe these guys who are telling you this ever-changing story? And, what proof do you have of any of this stuff happening? And then we asked the police the same thing. What proof do you have that any of this stuff happened? And I investigated to the best of my ability, and I found that this was clearly nothing other than a staged event. There's no evidence that any of this stuff happened, and we get proof and evidence over and over again. We confront these guys, every single one of these so-called police officers, many of whom are nothing more than crisis actors. We confront them on the street at Donald Trump events or Black Lives Matter events because they're always at the same events. They got to reuse the same people. Mm-hmm. They have to, because only a certain number of persons, I should say, have the ability to carry out these lies.
Did you have a chance to listen to my interview with Ole Damegard?
I did, of course. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. We have a host here on Renegade that just refuses to look at anything but the news as what it is versus the way that we dissect the news and a lot of these staged events. What could you tell our host, John Beatty? I really want to break it through to him that a lot of these incidences are staged psyop, false flags, hoaxes, crisis actors being involved. Nobody died at a lot of these events at all. What can you tell him? I don't know if he's listened to the Ole Damagard show or not, but what could you tell someone like him to break it through to him?
Well, I think, as I said, smarter people than myself have pointed these things out to me. And basically, I would just say that if one is going to go after, say, the government or the military, or one is going to say, hey, this is a operation of bankers, or an operation of the military-industrial complex, or an operation of Jew-run Hollywood. It's the same individuals and institutions that run the media, that run the military, who carry out genocide, who run the banks that burden the people with debt slavery and usury. So it's the media, and they're almost, I would say, the most important aspect of the Zionist-occupied government, the shadow government, whatever anyone wants to call it. That's the number one mind control mechanism of the organized international Jewry. So why would I don't know why one would believe anything on there. I tell folks, whatever you hear a government agent saying, and whatever one hears on the media, it is a lie. Now it's up to you at that point to dissect the lie and to reconstruct it into something that meets the level of truth. And when I say truth, is something that can be verified and has happened in reality.
To me, it's almost like you should use the scientific method that we were taught to use when we were young tots in school,
Yeah, I mean, there's also, folks like, Descartes, who have written volumes on the subject of finding out what the truth is, and saying exactly as you said, Nick, connecting the truth and every aspect of life and the universe, and connecting that with discernment and being able to figure out exactly what's going on.
Hey, Chris, here's kind of like the mindset of some people who are pro-white, pro-European, really fed up with the immigration problem, the forced immigration, forced diversity. Here's what some people, their mentality. Tell people that mass Muslim killings are false flags, the world laughs at you, and Jews take your freedoms away. Option 2, use the alleged mass killings as propaganda to stir up outrage towards Muslims, remove kebab, then remove Jews and save our people. Sometimes it's better to roll with the lie and use it to your advantage than make a laughing stock out of yourself, especially the fate of your people is at hand, or our people is at hand. So that's the mindset that I've come across.
Yeah, I mean, who's saying this though? I mean,
this was a comment. This was a comment on a YouTube video. I don't remember which YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like. I mean, I wouldn't take anything somebody like that said. I mean, that's either somebody who's kind of twisted their brain around in a pretzel. It sounds more likely, some sort of agent operates, some college student out of Israel who thinks he's pretty smart, or just a dishonest individual. Honestly, I'm like, man, that sounds like a Jew wrote that or something.
Yeah, this was actually Kyle and Sinead's ISIS crisis actor skit that they did together. I don't know if you had a chance to
I watched that today. Yeah. I thought that was, man, that stuff's pretty funny. I'm very critical when it comes to comedy, and that stuff that really cracks me up. But
yeah, it was awesome. So we're about to hit a break, but that's the mindset that some of these pro-whites have is, well, why would you want to destroy the narrative of this kebab that did this killing, this could rile up our people to stand up and fight. Why not lie? Have a white lie,
Because, I can answer that real simply coming into the break, because I don't want to operate like that. And I don't want people who do operate like that on my team. I'm after the truth and what's right.
Welcome back, everybody, to Circus Maximus. And I'm your host, Nick, and I have a man called Chris Dorsey on with me tonight. So, Chris, with that, I wanted to ask about the Tim Kaine and J.C. Wilmore situation and the video that you shared on there, and a little bit about these characters, because Tim Kaine, the VP selection of Hillary Cankle's Clinton with her cackle.
Yeah, there's a lot of strange stuff going on. Like, if Hillary Clinton even survives, with her health problems to the time of the election, supposedly Dr. Drew is saying that Hillary Clinton is having major health problems. So there you go. But getting back into your question about Tim Kaine and Gerald C. Wilmore, and that's Jerel C. Wilmore, member of the California State Bar. And, I just want to say, Tim Kaine is a bar association lawyer. That's one of the big problems with these guys. And when we talk about the abductions and the attempts on my life, which we'll get into with this J.C. Wilmore and Tim Kaine, and it's not just those two, but we'll list some others. They're all bar association lawyers. All the judges are bar association lawyers, and the Pentagon has lawyers. My brother by blood is a lawyer, for the Defense Department, and the lawyers are the big problem. They're the ones that push this unconstitutional system. And when you talk about lawyers in the city of Richmond and Richmond government, you talk about Tim Kaine, and Tim Kaine got his start on the Richmond City Council, and I'm in many ways associated with the Richmond City Council and the Richmond City government because I'm a ardent critic, and so I'm also was a member of the Democratic Committee, an office holder in the Democratic Committee. I've been elected to multiple Democratic conventions, including a state Democratic convention in which they changed the rules because of lawful bylaw, based challenges I was going to make to the state Democratic convention back in 2008. And that's when a lot of these threats started from members of the Democratic Party, high-ranking members associated with Tim Kaine, and also Jews who run the local Richmond City Democratic Committee. And this is as a result of many things that I've done, including exposing the rampant election fraud, which put folks like Tim Kaine actually in government. Tim Kaine won his initial city council race by several votes. And so we know he's fixed and he's rigged and he's a Jesuit plant from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And so over the years, I've had disagreements with Gerald C. Wilmore and have been warned about Gerald C. Wilmore from former Democratic candidates for Congress like Rick Waugh about what seemed to be criminal operations, shakedowns, thuggery, assaults, vandalism of property as a form of political intimidation carried out by these folks. And I'm talking about all the members of the Richmond Democratic Party and the Republicans like Eric Cantor. They've been involved in the similar activity, working with members of the Democratic Party. We all know Eric Cantor, former Republican House Majority Leader, mm-hmm. and he ties in with these guys too. Another bar association lawyer. And one night we went out, and this was following a video that Gerald C. Wilmore had made after I exposed one of his employees, this guy named Wayne Powell, who was a candidate for office for the Democratic Party, that he was stealing from a co-attorney. I was just, documenting a report in the National Law Review, and this really got them very angry. Also, Gerald C. Wilmore was angry about the fact that I would openly talk about the 9/11 attacks and the crimes of the Democratic Party in Democratic committee meetings. And one night he decided to, and he's 325 pounds. I'm about maybe 110 pounds, probably less. And he grabbed me around the neck, started choking me and banging my head up against a steel flagpole at the SunTrust Bank building in downtown Richmond in front of an eyewitness. And her name is Lee Shoemake, and she is dropped out of politics since because she's too honest and nice to be dealing with these folks in politics around Richmond. But she, wrote down what said, told the police what said, that, what happened, what she saw, which was, J.C. Wilmore almost, knocked me out, choking me and banging my head up against the steel flagpole. And that caused a dent. There's videos that show that. And then he started attempting to throw me down these steep stairs, attempting to get me on the ground. And thank God I wound up on my feet before he could get to me. He chased me literally down Main Street in Richmond, Virginia. The police had showed up at this point. He went back into the building. He came out with a lawyer for then Mayor Dwight Jones, who was also in on this, Demon Dwight Jones. And that guy's name is Jeffrey Bourne. He was a lawyer for Dwight Jones at that point, the so-called mayor, and now he is the head of school board. And what Jeffrey Bourne did was he ripped J.C. Wilmore's shirt, and before he denied telling the police that he clammed up, but he did rip J.C. Wilmore's shirt, and J.C. Wilmore said that I had done that. Now, obviously, by the time this went to the trial, after the statute of limitations was up on this, what they charged him with, which was simple assault, they had changed that story. So obviously that was a lie. But he was convicted of simple assault, and basically I had a head wound and bruising around my neck. And from that point forward, I really didn't leave my house without my gun. And basically nothing happened. He was charged with simple assault, and he was convicted, and nothing happened to him at all. He had to pay my $220 or something doctor bill. And then he gets the next time I see him around town, and then I see him featured at the Democratic convention with Tim Kaine in a video where it looks like Tim Kaine is taking orders from Gerald C. Wilmore. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of folks involved. Terry McAuliffe is involved in this as well. He's the current governor, and he's involved in the, obviously we out them for running the child prostitution rings through the CPS in Virginia. And of course, Terry McAuliffe is the fixer of the Clinton family, and was instrumental in espionage that resulted in United States nuclear secrets getting their way into China, which is not difficult, and the only way that China gets any of their nuclear secrets. But of course, we remember the Lincoln bedroom scandal and the scandal with the Epsteins and the Maxwells, Ghislaine Maxwell, mm-hmm. close associate of Terry McAuliffe. Yeah,
and Trump's associated with Ghislaine, or how do you pronounce her first name? Maxwell.
Ghislaine, I think, Ghislaine. But I could be wrong about that.
Yeah. There's a lot of
that's how I say it, and I've said her name numerous times because it's right out there for everyone to see. These associations that we're making, it's just like we wonder why everyone's not seeing this, and it's because they've got their blinders on, because those with eyes to see, and those with ears to hear can hear. This is what's happening. And So basically, these guys, they get away with these like attacks on my life, and they're all associated with the government, and more closely, they're associated with the Bar Association, being judges, elected officials, lawyers for the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond. They're all involved in these things, and they even go back to the Occupy movement. I called for the first Occupy Richmond movement. Occupy Richmond meeting. And what I did at the first meeting was told the 500 or so people that showed up that our target was the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond, that the bank, this private banking cartel controls everything, and that this operation, this international Occupy movement, is a government operation, and it is for the purpose of serving as a honeypot to gather information and to run opposition into the ground. And
absolutely. And it was also to break the ice for the latter Black Lives Matter to come into fruition.
Same folks, the same persons in Richmond who are organizing, leading, and even holding up signs at the Black Lives Matter are the same government operatives that were doing it during Occupy, and they are paid government agents, paid by NGOs like the Rockefeller Family Fund and the Tides Foundation and the National Endowment for Democracy, et cetera. And
that's a big one right there. The NED is huge. That's a worldwide NGO, along with U.S. aid, part of the CIA operations of coup d'etats and subversion movements all around the world.
All around the world. We tied the Occupy movement before we even started. Before I even called for the first Occupy Richmond meeting, we had documented that Otpor and Canvas were the operations behind this. But I want to go into further detail about these agencies I talked about and have been talking about from the beginning, and that's the Virginia State Capitol Police, which is the armed guards for the governor of Virginia. And that's very important because all of the most important military assets of the world government are located in Virginia.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that. Why is Virginia a Commonwealth? And there's 3 other states that are Commonwealths. We can get into that later. I wanted you to finish what you were saying, but I wanted to get into that Commonwealth situation.
It's a good question. I don't know why it is a Commonwealth. I know Pennsylvania and Massachusetts are also Commonwealth.
And Kentucky.
Is it? Oh, yeah. Yep. My apologies. Yeah. Kentucky as well. I don't know whether that has anything to do with why there's so many military installations in Virginia or not. I'm not sure anything about. I'm an expert in the Virginia Declaration of Rights, the Virginia Constitution, but I'm not an expert on why the Commonwealth is a Commonwealth. I'm an expert on common law, but I'm not an expert on really what someone would define as a Commonwealth, which would change that from the operations of any other state in the United States. It seems very similar to me.
There's tons of NGOs in Virginia. I covered that on one of my podcasts.
Yes, yeah.
So just amazing.
I think that has to do with its location and the location to the founding of the United States. Mm-hmm. I think it has to do with the location of because when we talk about the government and the operation of the government and the military being, so heavily located around where the first English settlers came into the United States, it seems very remarkable to me. And we're talking about the Eastern Fleet, located in Norfolk, Virginia, and that's pretty much where the first English settlers made land base, around Jamestown, Yorktown, of course, Newport News. There's lots of government operations. Northrop Grumman operates down there. And of course, when you talk about Northrop Grumman, one has to talk not only about nuclear submarines and battleships, but one has to talk about IT infrastructure for the government of Virginia. The government of Virginia's infrastructure is controlled by Northrop Grumman through a partnership with the Virginia government and through something called the VITA. So Northrop Grumman, which controls the nuclear weapons, and when this deal was brokered, it was brokered between Tim Kaine and his predecessor, Mark Warner, who's now a U.S. Senator, and Ronald Sugar, who is obviously, a Zionist Jew. And basically, they control every aspect of the government, and that's Northrop Grumman, the same institution that makes the nuclear weapons. So I'm not, we get it. You probably know a lot more about this subject than I. So I know about the location of military bases and underground bases and how this has to do with the Constitution of Virginia and the fact that the militia under Virginia law has control over, and this is United States law as well, over all of the military hardware of the state government of Virginia, of the Commonwealth, and also of the United States government. And that's just basic, simple reading of the United States Constitution. And then when you get into the writings of George Mason and James Madison and Thomas Jefferson and the Lee family, then you just see that verified. And basically the government of Virginia and the criminals that run it, they need to be put on trial for their crimes. And basically, I know firsthand that folks will attempt to kill you, will abduct you off the street, will attempt to frame you in every sort of way, will do a criminal cover-up of all of these things. And all of this is over me going on television and saying that the government is criminal and that the law needs to be upheld and that every single member of the United States Congress and executive branch and the leadership of the military is guilty of treason.
You've commented on the show that you did with Kyle. Somebody made a comment about how Charles Giuliani has said that the founding fathers and the Constitution are a sham. You came back with a comment related to how you have respect for Charles Giuliani. That being said, the original Constitution for the United States does nothing but set up a rational system in which the people, through the militia, control all power of government enforcement. And you stated that your third great-grandfather, Edward W. Dorsey of Harper's Ferry, Virginia, was a lieutenant in the Jefferson Guard of the Virginia Militia. He was part of the detachment that guarded John Brown after his capture. The Jefferson Guard became the 2nd Virginia Infantry Cavalry, CSA, aka the Stonewall Brigade. Following the War of Federal Aggression, the militia was abolished, and through the unconstitutional 14th Amendment, so-called citizens, in quotation marks, were transformed into subjects of government. The militia, which is the only legitimate constitutional enforcement arm, has been usurped by the Freemasonic police force. Unconstitutional enforcement arms such as municipal, state, federal police are the entities who, through unlawful use of force, subjugate the people and invert the basis of our common law. The common law is our cultural heritage. In addition, it is our people's legal system. All crimes of the government will be ended through enforcing the law of the land. Through proper use of the Constitution, the current government shall be abolished and leaders convicted of treason. So go into that, please.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, because I want to just say that the Constitution obviously is not perfect. I want to state that government can never be supreme. The Constitution is not even the rules for the people. It is the rules for the servants of the people. The people ordain the government, and God is to man as man is to government. God is the creator of man, and man is the creator of government. So man can never be subjected by a two-dimensional creation. And all that being said is, the common law states this in redundancy. The Constitution for the United States states this in redundancy, that the government is servants of the people. And then it gets in, that can be empty rhetoric, of course. But then every place where there's a lever of power, it leaves the people in control. Now, George Mason wrote the Virginia Constitution, in Article 1, Section 13 of Virginia Constitution, which states, gives more context to the Second Amendment to the Constitution. And basically it says that at all times, the people must have military superiority to the government power. And then when Mason was questioned on what is meant by the militia, he says the militia is the entire body of the people. Now we can get into what the people means at this point, but I don't believe in being exclusionary. I do think that, Ashkenazi Jews, they should really not be allowed to serve in the United States government. No. But besides that, I don't have a belief in sort of exclusionary policies. But when they say the people, that means the descendants of what was considered the people when the Constitution was written and ratified.
The posterity that was with a capital P.
Right. Okay. And so I fall into that category. Mm-hmm. So obviously genetic tests, they're showing that most Americans do. I just want to be clear about this because I think they are pushing a lot of ethnic and racially divisive issues, and it is very clear. I mean, that a lot of African Americans, they have the same ancestry as some European Americans. They have European ancestry as well. So many of them could be considered people using that terminology. I wish to be inclusive of everyone. Everyone has certain inalienable rights, and I don't wish to trample on anyone's for any purpose at any time. So we know that the people are rightly placed on top of their two-dimensional creation. And this is written in redundancy. And I agree with Charles Giuliani on a number of things. The hypocrisy in the Bible, which is also, when you say, what's a Bible? Well, that's two bulls, right? Yes. And what's in the Bible? It's full of paradox. Oh, that's two bulls as well. And how does Jesus speak? Oh, he speaks in parables. Okay, so that's two bulls. So obviously you can take the best and worst of the Bible, like the yin and the yang, and say, oh, the whole thing is just hypocritical. And yeah, exactly it is. And so is life. And so we need to take that into consideration when we look at the Constitution for the United States, which says at the beginning and everything after it saying the people ordain the government. In the Virginia Constitution, like in the Declaration of Rights, it says the government must be at all times amenable to the people. It also states that if at any time the government gets outside of the wishes of the people, then it is the right and the duty of the people to abolish it. Mm-hmm. And this is set forward in the law, and that's what's happening now. There's nothing lawful about the United States government. If you go from school board up to the president of the United States and all of their Jew bosses in every town, all of them need to be put on trial, and we need to start concentrating on putting together something like the Nuremberg trial, yes, but kind of the opposite in the fact that the Nuremberg trial was 100% illegitimate, right, and we want to have a legitimate trial using our common law, which is mandated by the law that these folks swear an oath to uphold while putting their hands on a Bible, which states don't swear to anything. So that's where we stand with all of these things. I'm a man, number one. I'm one of the people, number two. And all government, all two-dimensional creations, and anyone who attempts to get authority out of that and inflict that authority unlawfully over myself or any members of the militia or any of the body of the people, they need to be neutralized immediately.
And you mentioned in some of your videos how our names are all in capital letters. That seems to create that straw man corporation attached to our given name at birth. Is that correct?
Yes. I'm called Chris Dorsey, and that's why a lot of the times folks think it's kind of silly when I say a man called Chris Dorsey. Mm-hmm. Folks who know me, they'll just call me Chris or worse, sometimes. Yeah. But when you talk about all capitalized letters, is that something that you ever do? It's something that I never do.
That's Admiralty law, isn't it?
Right. It seems to have something to do with Admiralty law. It seems to be a way where they're using these word tricks to decapitate, to turn us from a living being into a spirit, a dead spirit, because when we receive these court documents, what are they? They're summons. So what is one summon? A dead spirit.
We're hitting a break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Circus Maximus, and I've got a man called Chris Dorsey on the line with me. And that legal term, the Latin name is Capitis Diminutio Maxima. So that's from Black's Law Dictionary, 6th edition, page 211, if you guys want to look more into that. And if you wanted to get more into that, Chris, we can continue or we can go in a different direction.
It's really up to you because, this is a big rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So, obviously, a lot of this has to do with standing in court and folks comprehending the standing. Now, I think one thing that's really important when we talk about the law and being proactive in forwarding the lawful abolition of the current government is annihilation of the Bar Association and the current maritime admiralty court system and the procedure. A lot of folks might call it Roman canon law. Mm-hmm. I think it's Talmudic law at its base, yes. and we just need to annihilate it 100%. And I hope to. I wish and think we will all work together, everyone on Redicate Broadcasting and even a larger group of the body of the people. We're going to work on this all together for the complete annihilation of this so-called legal system. As I referenced before, all of these CIA torturers, all of the nuclear agreements between the United States and the Soviet Union and Israel, everything is brokered by attorneys and lawyers. And when folks become experts and they immerse themselves in what these words mean and what the reality of our current so-called judicial system is, and they'll look at the makeup of the United States Supreme Court, and you'll say, wow, that doesn't look like the makeup of the United States in any sort of way, shape, or form. I don't, I know that this controversial subject, Christianity on Renegade Radio, but my ancestors are Anglo-Saxon Protestants of Irish, Scottish, English, and German descent. Yeah. And that is the majority of the individuals who colonized the United States and created the system by which we are alleged to live, which has been hijacked and usurped. Mm-hmm. But there is not one single white Anglo-Saxon Protestant on the United States Supreme Court. And if there was, they'd be controlled by, the Zionists, but it's right out in the open.
Yep. You have Catholics and you have Jews.
Catholics and Jews, exactly. Papists, Roman papists, and Jews.
Yep.
Folks who believe that a guy wearing a yarmulke and a cape and covering up one of the largest pedophile networks on the planet is someone who should control the decisions that a slight majority of the Supreme Court justices follow, and that the other folks, the Jews, are even worse. So there you go.
A lot of the founding fathers and those that followed were giving warnings to the American people of a Jesuit infiltration. A lot of people mock those that talk about the Jesuit, the Society of Jesus, where they say you're misdirecting from the Jewish problem when you talk about the Jesuits. But you even had Samuel Morse, who invented the Morse code, even warning about the Jesuits and put out a couple books about that.
Yeah, I mean the Jesuits, and it's not the Jews or the Jesuits, because we know the Jesuits were founded by Marrano Jews like
correct.
Ignatius Loyola and Francis Borgia. And that's where the idea of the Jesuit assassins came. And they didn't even attempt to hide that at all, because, the Borgias are amongst the most famous assassins of all time, or one of the most famous assassin families of all time. And, of course, Ignatius Loyola. And
real quick, Ignatius Loyola came out of a brotherhood called the Los Ilumbrados. That was the version of the Illuminati before the Bavarian Illuminati.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes, exactly. Always talking to someone smart, always. So here we go. We've got these Marrano Jews, and what do? They do what the protocols tell them to do well before the protocols, and they assimilate and they infiltrate these movements of whatever nation state, whatever region of the world they're in. They infiltrate and they subvert.
And they've been kicked out of several countries as well as the Jews. So there's a tie-in to there with both groups.
I don't think one can separate them. Now, when we talk about Tim Kaine, one of the things that I thought was key about this, and they're not hiding it anymore, is Tim Kaine says that he's a Jesuit and gets a round of applause from the Democratic Convention. So I think that that's very telling. Georgetown University and all of the close associations with the federal government and the training ground of Georgetown University for the modern leadership of the federal government. It's pretty remarkable.
Well, they even have a military branch out of Georgetown. I think it's the Walsh department, like Robert Walsh or something like that, where a lot of your top-notch government officials go through this kind of like Army War College within Georgetown.
Amazing.
Yeah, and Bill Clinton, of course, educated over at Georgetown as well.
And Carol Quigley, too,
correct.
Who is the handler of Bill Clinton. Clinton.
Yeah, where you have a lot of these so-called truthers. Oh, Carol Quigley exposed the New World Order.
Oh, that's hilarious.
With the tragedy and hope, the Anglo establishment or whatnot, he called it.
Well, it's a misdirection. And
yes.
Of course, the Jesuits are known for their misdirection. And if you said, United Kingdom, I would agree. I would agree with that statement if you said United Kingdom, even though it's an illegitimate monarch sitting on the throne. And obviously that monarch is run by, the Rothschilds, the Schiffs, the old school. And
prior to that was Oliver Cromwell that invited the Jews back into England when they were kicked out of England for a few hundred years.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, he had to pay back his paymasters.
And he ended up being one of the top functioning commanders of the one of the Indies companies, the British East Indies or West Indies companies as well.
I mean, it's just all the same folks pushing all the same agenda year after year, day after day, and it'll hit you on the local level too. I guarantee you, it hit me. And if we wanted to talk about some things like Antonin Scalia and the Jesuit order and the pedophile network. There's a lot of folks, and I agree, that think that he was assassinated while sitting out at one of these elite pedophile ranches, and that Scalia, obviously Jesuit trained, obviously a member of Opus Dei, along with a number of other treasonous actors inside the United States government.
Clarence Thomas, also Opus Dei.
Yes, absolutely. There you go. There's another connection. Again, so when we talk about Scalia, I want to talk, tying this back into England and the usurpation by the Jews of England, and talk about something called a Red Mass, which I started becoming very familiar with when Antonin Scalia held a Red Mass not very far from a retail store that I used to own in Richmond. And I looked into a Red Mass, and it's a very satanic operation. It's Jesuit. They do it all of the time.
It sounds like Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut type of ceremony.
Well, I'll tell you, they pray to Thomas More during the Red Mass, and of course, Thomas More is known as one who burned at the stake himself. But before he burned at the stake himself, he was responsible for burning thousands of his fellow countrymen for the outside Roman agenda.
Sounds like St. Patrick over in Ireland.
Very much so, very much similar. But that this Red Mass is something very bizarre. I've done videos on this, and I urge folks to check out my research and others' research on this subject, because a Red Mass is a very, very strange ritual that they do, and it's not something that's secret either. It's covered by the media, and
so is Bilderberg now.
Of course. Oh yeah, I've got a lot of experience with Alex Jones at the Bilderberg conference, and even back then, when we. After I broke ties with Occupy Richmond, but still, used a website using the name Occupy Richmond and just basically used it to out what it was. A number of us put on something called Occupy Bilderberg when the Bilderberg conference was held in Chantilly. And basically we sent letters to the W. Stephen Flaherty, who is the head of the Virginia State Police, requiring that he arrest these folks guilty of treason, who are operating in Chantilly, Virginia. And, of course, we got no response. But we publicized that and, sent that out to the press. And we held a press conference for the event. It was covered by several local news stations and, made a video. And then Alex Jones came in. And that's when the whole thing just fell apart and went to absolute dog crap.
Sounds like the Texas gun rally that he hijacked a few years ago.
I mean, he's such a bag. He's such a joker. I mean, he's a joke. Yeah. And so is Luke Rudowski and Adam Kokesh and Mark Schuldice Dice.
Yes.
I mean, you name all those guys. Name any of them. They're out there, and I was happy, and I didn't videotape everything at that point. I relied on others, which was a bad mistake on my part. Even though I got on InfoWars calling for the arrest of all these individuals, they attempted to keep me off the air, and basically, we said back in 2012, in front of this crowd where we're surrounding the Bilderberg groups, armed. I was armed, of course. I was armed with my Bible, my Constitution, my firearm, and of course some ganja that I was going to, later to smoke in front of the police station that was right in front of where the conference was taking place. And so we just need the numbers of individuals who comprehend the law and will show up armed, lawfully armed. And we need to start surrounding these folks and doing things like calling up the highest levels of the Defense Department and saying, okay, we need to start negotiating, the arrest of the leadership of the Pentagon, and we need to start handing over all of the top secret documents, all of the nuclear codes, all of the MRAP weapons that are, in all the police departments, all of the military hardware. We need to start handing it over to the body of the people through the militia. And that's the only way that there will ever be any change that will not result into, a genocidal wiping out of 98% of the planet. That's the only way we're going to avoid that.
Another thing that just came out in the media, which I was a little surprised about, mainstream media is now covering Operation Gladio, due to the Turkey coup and the alleged Ankara bombing of the Istanbul airport. So Operation Gladio is now openly being discussed in the media. What do you think about that?
Well, I think they can't hide it anymore. You start seeing the patterns where they go, oh, that's crazy. Operation Gladio. No, this was a radical Islamic terrorist who stole a truck and did all this other stuff. And, and then we start exposing like y'all did, like we in the militia did and some others did about Richard Gutjahr and, Enoch Wilf and these connections that you can't ignore to the Israeli security forces and every aspect of every one of these hoax shootings, fake bombings, real bombings, hijackings, and name any sort of event that's covered by the media in a 24-hour ad nauseum, and it's always the same Israeli institutions behind all of them when you climb to the very top and dig to the very bottom of every shite hole. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You were mentioning G4S having some sort of operational base in Virginia. During the Democratic National Convention, they had the crisis actor, that woman who lost her son allegedly, and she was one of the people speaking, and they even had a Sandy Hook person, a survivor or whatnot, talking live on the stand as well. So they're putting this in our faces. It's ridiculous.
It's right in everybody's face, and if you don't see it, you're just you're lacking intellectual will, and I would say also a form of self-control. You got to be able to discern what's BS and what's true. One has to be able to pick through this. So when this stuff first starts coming out, that's how I started becoming known and making a name for myself, is because I would call this stuff out pretty instantly. And it wasn't because I was doing anything other than listening to smarter individuals than myself and applying critical thought to what I was hearing and seeing in the media. And it's very simple when one starts doing that. Within an hour of the staged Orlando shooting at the Pulse nightclub, it was known that this guy Omar Mateen was a employee of G4S security.
Plus an actor in 3 or 4 different films.
Exactly. And that's key, because these folks are actors. We find actors over and over again, time after time. Nobody else can do this stuff. And I was referencing a G4S security office on the campus of Virginia Commonwealth University, and it's in a place called College Station, and that's on Grace Street. It's a well-known street around Virginia Commonwealth University, and it's in a building that I used to have a retail store in, about 1,200 square foot building is now the Richmond headquarters for G4S Security. And back in between 2002 and 2004, I worked in there every day in that very same building. And it was run by Virginia Commonwealth University. And of course, you know, these colleges and universities, they are nothing but training grounds for and employment honey traps, not only for the credit card industry and the banks, but also for the military industrial complex. Look at the jobs that are created now. Military, IT infrastructure, Homeland Security.
G4S is also handling the water or gas meter collections or readings all over the UK as well. So they're going to your front door. There's videos on YouTube where people are mocking and harassing these G4S meter readers. And it's just ridiculous that they have this private security company going door to door. Pretty much they could be just that spy network on a more personal basis that gathers intel. If it's kind of like, do you really trust your post office person? I don't.
No, I mean, of course not. I mean, I trust some of them that I would talk to and see around in the street, my neighbors, the folks that I know. But when you talk about G4S security in the United Kingdom, I also would like to bring up some connections between these fake bombs left at Old Trafford Stadium for the last game of the 2015-2016 Barclays Premier League game, where there was a staged drill that was a lot like the Munich, Germany drill and a lot like the Nice, France drill that was held in Manchester Town Centre and at Old Trafford Stadium in Manchester. G4S security left a fake bomb which canceled the final game of the Barclays Premier League season between Manchester United and Bournemouth. And there's also, massive connections between the city of Bournemouth and G4S security. But I mean, I don't want to get too far into the weeds with this, but I mean, all of these spy agencies, and G4S is the largest security firm in the world. Mm-hmm. So yes, these are one of the actors, and the leadership of G4S security, they need to be put on trial. Mm-hmm. And the really high ups, they require, after their conviction, to be lawfully executed. And that's what I advocate for, because I think that that's the key. The United States has been executing, innocent people, through DNA evidence. It's been shown that thousands of innocent people over hundreds of years have been wrongfully executed. But when we're talking about capital punishment, we're talking about lawful executions. And I can be talked out of this because I used to oppose capital punishment. But once I realized exactly how the government works, I realized that should only be for those carrying out the war crimes and treason of the United States government, the Israeli government, the Russian government, the British government, all of these Zionist-occupied governments of the world. That's who capital punishment is intended for. And
it seems with this bar association, this is coming from the Crown. The Esquire title that the lawyers have is sort of like not a knighthood, but a step below that. And you also have had some of these leaders of America actually become knighted as well, which violates the Constitution altogether. What was it? Poppy Bush was knighted, as I think he was became part of the Pilgrim Society, I believe.
Yeah, that's true. Esquire is the title given to bar association lawyers, and we talk about the bar association. We're talking about those who are granted the ability to practice law by King James, the inner and middle temple of the city of London. Mm-hmm. And that's very key because these lawyers still in the city of London, these bar association attorneys, and these are all allegories for control of one's own mind.
Mm-hmm. Same with government in general, control of the mind.
Right. And that the bar is representing, the bar that the gold and silver key must open to control one's own mind. Mm. I don't think most bar association attorneys know this.
Well, that's also on the Vatican City flag as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's esoteric symbolism. I mean, you got to know this stuff to be able to function. It's like a knife. It can be used to cut bread and it can be used to stab somebody in the back. But definitely, if one's not fluent in esoteric and occult symbology, one's not going to be able to be a leader in even a legitimate form of government.
No, not at all. I agree. I would like to thank Bill Cooper for getting me into the esoteric knowledge and then breaking into other areas of that. Otherwise, I would be a novice when it comes to even having this conversation with you right now. A lot of people want to poo-poo Bill Cooper for some of the things that he said or done, but I think towards the end he was even waking up more himself after having been able to have access to the internet. You know, he was just going off of a lot of the books that he was reading. He didn't have the internet until later towards the end of his life. Real quick, here's a tweet that one of our Renegade think tank members dug up from Richard Spencer of the National Policy Institute, the one who coined the term alt-right. Here he says, "I dream of Caesar Borgia on the seat of Rome." Nice find, Hugh. Nice find.
Yeah, that's not me.
No.
That's actually that. So we know that guy's our enemy then.
Yes.
So that's great. That's great. Good to know. I mean, honestly, I didn't know who Richard Spencer was before I started, hearing y'all talk about him. So, he's on our radar screen. I mean, the alt-right is an absolute joke. I was watching CNN yesterday. I keep that on in the background, as much as I can take it. And then I have to, turn on classical music or watch rigged sporting events on television or something else. Mm-hmm. But I just have to know what the propaganda they're putting out. And I started hearing over and over again with the new campaign manager for Trump, the term alt-right.
There you go. Controlled opposition. People need to look more into it.
Controlled opposition. And obviously, you guys called it from the beginning. You guys called it from the jump. And there you go. I don't worry about things anymore because I have a skill set where I don't have to worry about, whether I'm going to be able to, keep up the work that I'm doing. I have a skill set. It's a talent. And I know that y'all have it, in spades because when you guys are always accurate, and it's because y'all seem to have a lot of the same discernment.
Our Judar is strong.
I think that's true. And I also think that that even more strong than that is the wish to get to the truth and the wish to be, to be correct. And
welcome back for the last half hour, everybody. And I've got a man called Chris Dorsey on the line with me, and we are uncovering and dissecting and just having a nice conversation between two gentlemen who have the ability to discern information and call out the bullshit. So, Chris, we were getting into controlled opposition. And for me, that was one of my fortes in my beginnings of research and coming across a lot of the New World Order and these Alex Jones type of people. And I was able to figure out that Alex Jones was controlled opposition within a month of discovering who he was. So, as far as you go, I'm drawn to people like yourself because of your ability to have the intellectual ability to have conversations and share information to be able to help other people wake up. And I really appreciate you, and I'm very happy that you were able to participate tonight. And we're going to have a caller here from 773. 773, you are from Chicago. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
How's it going?
Am I on the show?
You are live. And who am I speaking with?
Oh, hi. Hi, Nick. Yes, Ed from Chicago, South Side.
Oh, yeah. You've called in before, and I believe that you're a strong believer in the militia movement, and you've got the right man on the line right now. What would you like to add to the conversation?
Well, no, I don't want to. You guys are doing so good. But I do want to comment. My comment was, or I wanted to say, you're talking about Jesuits and the mindset of the typical people. You know, I'm 56 years old, mm-hmm. and all the people that I know, when you say Jesuits, they just like, they just love. They're so good. They're so great. You know, you got this Ignatius High School over here, and you got Loyola.
Chicago is filled with Jesuit schools. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
it's just amazing the mindset, how people they have such adoration and respect for the Jesuits, and they have no concept of the evil. You know, it just amazes me. That's kind of all I wanted to say.
Yeah, they were one of the original infiltrators of a lot of the third world nations. They studied the people. They got into their psyche, and they were able to subvert them and pretty much convert them. A lot of forced conversions. A lot of that took place, like South America, your Asiatic areas, even in Africa. Japan had their Jesuit infiltration as well.
Great Lakes area with, back, before the French-Canadian War and all that.
Yeah, the Seneca. The Death and Rebirth of the Seneca is an excellent book I've read, and it talks about the. Sorry to interrupt, but I think that's what you were talking about, the Iroquois Confederation. Is that what you were talking about? The infiltration of the Iroquois Confederation.
Correct. Yes.
And the Jesuits they used to play the Iroquois Confederation off the French and the English. And that was how they would maintain power over all of them in the frontier of the colonies. So around the area of the Seneca, or the Iroquois Confederation.
Still a lot of issues going on in Canada with the Jesuit order too, with molestations and rapes of children.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. With the Indian tribes.
I'm gonna sign off, but I can't even bring that topic up to anybody here.
I know. I believe you.
Brainwashed.
They cannot believe. You know, I'm kind of breaking the ice with the Jew thing, but
yeah,
the Jesuits. Oh my God!
Well, you got a lot of Italians in Chicago. You've got a lot of Polish. You got a lot of Mexicans. You got a lot of Irish. So yeah, a lot of strong Catholic base in Chicago.
Right. You know, and you were mentioned before. The founding nationalities were Irish, Scot, English, but German.
Yeah.
But Irish, that's Catholic. You know, and they're strong Catholic. They believe, and they're not changing. It's hilarious. I'm Polish, but
yeah.
Well, I've been my eyes are wide open, baby. But anyway, I will let you go, fellas. You're doing an excellent job, and Thank you for taking my call.
Oh, you're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
You have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, Chris, we've got about 20 minutes. I would like you to go into a direction you'd like to go and anything that you've been thinking about that you'd like to put out on air.
Well, I'd just like to keep following up on this, the strategy moving forward for the militia and the body of the people. And, we've already laid out the purposes for and the reasons and the motivation for taking our action. But I wish to forward the concept and the political notion that we shall take no action other than action which is based in the idea of taking the power. And when I say power, I mean military and money power away from the institutions that control them now. And I think if any other actions are taken, they're not legitimate. Nothing's going to happen through reform. This system can't be reformed, and we ought to stop thinking in any way about any reform at all, and concentrate only on restoring the natural order and the abolition of the government. And I honestly love to hear other people's thoughts on that moving forward, especially folks like you and your listeners about what they think about that, because that's the idea we've been forwarding for years. We don't work with anyone, and that's why we don't work with anyone, because basically everyone's controlled opposition. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants a piece of the current pie, yep. And we want to throw the poison pie away and take out the parts that are not poison and control them and make a whole new pie that is good for all, or better for all, I should say.
Yeah, the well's been poisoned, and what we need to do is filtrate that poison and keep the poison out. Right,
exactly. And we need to go forward with this idea. I was yesterday, after I was harassed again by the police, knocking on my door, after being threatened by the chief of police, claiming, making statements, asking if I was threatening the chief of police, which of course I wasn't. And after that took place, I began my second round of contacts with the United States Eastern District so-called federal court. And I had a conversation with the clerk of the court. And basically, I established my standing, told her basics. She claimed that she was a woman who was in charge and that she understood the Constitution and common law. And after a brief conversation, she clearly was not.
No.
And this video is up on YouTube, but the idea behind the video is much more important than the video itself, which, I mean, it was something that I did. I put work into it, so obviously I think it's important, but I think the concept is more important. And the concept is we need to stop accepting in any way anything the government says. People will just pay their taxes and go, oh, got to pay your taxes. Call H&R Block. Why? Under whose authority?
I agree. And your YouTube is Richmond Peace, so everybody knows. And
yeah,
it's RVA4, the number 4 Peace.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I attempted to change it to the Virginia Militia, but they wouldn't let me. Oh. And again, I do want to point out, I use that YouTube page. I upload videos, but I don't own it. Basically, YouTube makes a lot of money off me and pays me very little every now and again. So yeah, I mean, the email I use is rva4peace@gmail.com, but it's not my email. It's not mine. Because again, we don't own anything in the society. We are, as much as we participated, the best we can own in this society right now is our own mind.
Yes.
And
we can't even own our own property, because if we don't pay our property taxes, they can take our property away from us.
Right.
And plus there's eminent domain as well that's involved.
Exactly the key point. We don't own anything. You pay a mortgage, which stands for death note. And basically everything's unaffordable in this society. Unless somebody is involved in some really bad stuff. And, when I say somebody who's making generally $100,000 a year or more, unfortunately, somehow they're involved in some bad stuff. And when you get up to the millionaires and billionaires and then trillionaires on top of that, then they're the worst. So basically, we just need to take everyone who's benefiting from this society financially, which is the garbage. This is disgusting. This is a disgusting society we live in, and live on. And anyone who's benefiting from this, or anyone who wants to keep this thing going, they're guilty of massive crimes. And, the richest people I know, they work for the government, or they have controlling influence over the government. So one thing I'd like to make a key point on, as far as strategy and tactics, I think it would be a great strategy to indict I would say the top 1% of wealth holders in every city, state, and town in the United States. And that would be a starting point to demolishing the system. Because
I'd like to get rid of dual Israeli citizens as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's obviously part of the plan. Stanley Fischer, who is the individual who's really calling the shots for the Federal Reserve Bank system. He's a former head of the World Bank. And in 2013, several months before he took over being vice president of the the Federal Reserve Bank, he was president of the Bank of Israel. And, this goes for Dov Zakheim, who announced trillions of dollars missing from the Pentagon.
We're hearing that again, like 6.5 trillion from the Pentagon just last week, I believe.
Okay, there we go. So again,
something's brewing.
How much more do we need to take the action that we are advocating, though? I mean, that's the question for the people. How much more do you require for us to provide? How much more information do smarter people than myself and I have to provide to the masses before they take the action that we know about? When we're talking about, taking out on the street during these live drills or staged controlled opposition rallies and stuff, we operate with military tactics. We go out armed and we flank the police and we let them know, hey, I'm flanking you right now. I'm armed and I'm behind you. And that's the way we're going to do it. Now, we could, if we had 15 to 20 individuals in every town like that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it would be very, very simple. And what we're talking about, we wouldn't start this operation out with just 15 or 20 people in every town. We need a lot more than that. But we have the numbers. It's a very small percentage of the population which we shall use to abolish this criminal government. And we have standing. And when I talk about standing and attorneys and all this other stuff, I have family members that are attorneys for the Pentagon, and my brother works for the Pentagon. And basically all he can do is he can't answer anything about what he does for a living. I know he used to cover up the torture at Guantanamo Bay. He was allegedly hired to help give lawful trials to those held at Guantanamo Bay by the Obama administration. That's a punchline. And now he's involved in something I'd really like to get into for the last little bit, and this is tying into everything else we've talked about, and that's the top secret government in the United States. About 854 to 900,000 individuals who are employed by the Defense Department or private corporations that have top secret clearance in regard to the shadow government. And allegedly my brother gives clearance to these folks. But I want to talk about that because the Congress and the President of the United States in the Oval Office and on Capitol Hill, they don't run anything. It's the government is run right now under continuity of operations. And this is a FEMA operation. And this is tied to UN Agenda 21. And that's who's running this government. The idea that, we all know the elections are fixed, but the idea that these Congress people and Congress persons or even the Supreme Court run things, it's run in the continuity of operations. And that's a Department of Homeland Security operations. And they run out of places like Site R, and that's Raven Rock Complex in Raven Rock, Pennsylvania. Site C, that's in Washington County, Maryland. That's where I was born. That's where a lot of my family's from, and around Hagerstown in Washington County. That's where Site C is. And also NORAD Cheyenne Mountain, of course, in Colorado Springs, Mount Weather, Berryville, Virginia, Mount Pony, Culpeper, Virginia, Greenbrier, White Sulphur Springs. They call that West Virginia now, but, that's not even a real thing. And they built a new $3.4 billion headquarters for the Defense Department in Anacostia, Washington, D.C. That's the largest building operation since the Pentagon. And that's what controls the government. And the average man and woman on the street, they don't know anything about this.
They also built a huge data center over in Utah as well.
Of course. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. The NSA can never be forgotten because the NSA, and when I talk about the leaders of the institutions that control the United States government, which must be executed, I'm talking about the leadership of the NSA. And
also the NRO as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
National Reconnaissance Organization.
Thank you, man. You're one step ahead of me. And also, I want to get into these mind control operations that the media are running, because these false flag operations, they're part of operations like Monarch or Operation Artichoke. They're mind control operations that have been common knowledge, public knowledge since the Church Commission, since the year I was born. Actually, the year before I was born, I think. I'm 42 years old now. I think the Church Commission was 73, but I'm not absolutely sure. But I know that the Church Commission, I know what the contents of the Church Commission was, and that is information about these mind control programs carried out unwittingly against the American people. And also, this ties in with the weather warfare and what we're seeing now here in the Summer of Chaos, which you guys have really covered, unlike any other broadcast media source in the world.
Thank you, sir.
Is the Summer of Chaos. Okay, so let's look at what we have right now. We have a fire, and it's burning in California, in San Bernardino.
Non-stop fires.
Non-stop fires.
In the most fertile land in America.
Exactly. Started by the Department of Corrections in California, started by the government in San Bernardino. What was the last thing we heard about San Bernardino? Oh, yeah. It was that fake shooting.
Those Allah Akbar.
Yeah, the fake shooting at the fucking, excuse my language, it's at the Christmas party.
Yeah, with the CARE, the Muslim Brotherhood organization, pretty much providing the patsies for that.
Of course. Complete patsies, complete staged event in San Bernardino, California. So then we'll fast forward to the Summer of Chaos, 2016, and was it Sterling. Alton Bottrell Sterlings is the guy's real name. Alton Bottrell Sterlings.
And the Philander Castile.
Right. But this one in Baton Rouge, It was the same time the Philando Castile thing. Philando, like Philadelphia, where the Democratic Convention was held, and Orlando, where the fake shooting was held. Yeah. They do these name games. So Alton B. Sterlings is the guy's real name, and his alias is Alton Sterling. And while the Brexit is taking place and the pound sterling is plummeting, Alton Sterling, a.k.a. Alton Sterlings, which is the guy's real name, was allegedly shot by the police. Unfortunately, according to the records, this guy was a sex offender and was dead as of February 25th, 2015. So he couldn't possibly have been shot during the 2016 Summer of Chaos.
But and that Corrine Gaines, that seemed pretty suspicious too.
That too, but let's finish tying the knot with Baton Rouge.
Yes. And
the weather warfare that's going on in Baton Rouge during the Summer of Chaos. Unconventional warfare exercise 16 is what you're seeing. So you had the fake shooting and the riots in Baton Rouge, and now you have the flooding in Baton Rouge due to chemical and weather warfare, cloud seeding, and chemtrailing. So you have weather warfare in San Bernardino, California, after the psychological warfare operation of the fake shooting in San Bernardino. And now you have the weather warfare in Baton Rouge with the flooding, after the chemtrailing, and also after the riots and the staged Alton Bottrell Sterlings.
Nice tying the knot there, bud. Very nice.
Yes, and Corrine Gaines, fake, race war psyop, attempt to make the so-called sovereign citizens movement look stupid, and also a rollout of them thinking that they can knock on people's door, enter into somebody's house, and shoot them and their offspring and get away with it, and have people debate like whether that was the right thing to do or not.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really out of their mind, and I had to call the Baltimore County Police over that, and I talked to one of my servants there, and basically, we caught him in a lie. This guy told us there were no body cameras at the scene, but then they put out a picture during the psyop which shows a guy with a camera on his helmet, standing allegedly in this Corrine Gaines house, and Corrine Gaines is like Osama bin Laden. There's the light-skinned Corrine Gaines, the dark-skinned Corrine Gaines, the Corrine Gaines that doesn't look at all like she's African-American and looks like she's some sort of South Asian. Corrine Gaines' cousin was sourced by the media, and her name was Champ Taylor, allegedly, an actor who calls herself the original Abercrombie Beyonce. I mean, these things, they just become more and more ridiculous. I laugh at them.
Yeah, me too.
I mock them.
And Kyle and Rob Revolt, I was on his show, covered Milwaukee, and then you've been covering the Milwaukee martial law, the buildup of a race war as well.
Yeah, that's their thing. They did it with, when folks saw who was playing in the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl halftime show, they telegraphed this stuff. The Black Panthers versus the White Broncos. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you go, okay, well, let's look at the mural at the Bank of America building in Charlotte and compare that to the mural at the Denver airport. And you'll see they're exactly the same. And they forward this martial law, UN Agenda 21, what do they call that? Georgia Guidestone type scenario. And they're putting this out to the public at large now.
Yeah, and they have the disarming type of mural over at the Denver airport as well, along with what was it at the Rockefeller Center or the UN? They've got the gun that's tied in a knot.
Oh yes, thank you very much. And I will say that the NRA is an absolute joke. Yes. The local so-called gun lobby here in Virginia.
Oh, and they're in Virginia. How about that?
Yeah, and also the one that lobbies the Virginia state government, called the Virginia Citizens Defense League. They're all run by law enforcement.
Gun Owners of America is Controlled Opposition, Larry Pratt, Council for National Policy, the World Anti-Communist League, a lot of the subversion in Latin America he was involved with.
And I will say this, I know firsthand experience the gun control agenda and the gun grab agenda. And will stop. This government will and shall be abolished.
Well, a man called Chris Dorsey. That's our show. I really appreciate you being on, and we will be in touch. Thank you very much, my friend.
Oh, thank you very much. Violate their oath to uphold the Constitution. So basically, it's easy to figure these guys out. All you have to do is assert one's authority. One has to just assert their authority as a man. And one of the people, it's good to be carrying a firearm, which I usually am, carrying a firearm. And I point a camera at these guys and I interrogate them. And when I interrogated individuals down there and I do this to the media as well. And that's what I did. I went down and I interrogated the media and I interrogated the police on the scene about the incident, asking them basic, simple questions like, did this really happen? And I want to point out that what is alleged to have happened is allegedly during a live drill, which closed down part of the city of Richmond, and that was the Greyhound bus station. Across the street from the Greyhound bus station is the minor league baseball stadium, which was also a staging area for not only the police, but the media. And they had closed the street off the night before this happened, which was March 31st, 2016. So March 30th, the police had closed down that section of the boulevard in Richmond, Virginia, where this incident took place. And this was part of a staged drill. And I have about 30 pages of what this drill started off as, and it was a drill put on by the Virginia State Police and the Joint Terrorism Task Force, operating out of what they call the Fusion Center, which is about a mile and a half away from my house. And basically, they made up a false scenario to begin the drill, and the false scenario was that there was a interdiction on a quote unquote China bus from New York to South Carolina. This is the basis of the drill I'm talking about right now, and that the interdiction resulted in a seizure of 12 pounds of cocaine. And of course, the whole thing was just false. That scenario never took place. But this was the drill. And also, so what happened during the drill, allegedly, is after the drill was over, after the training exercise was over, and I have all the details of what's been allowed to be made public about the training exercise. I've required that I, filed lawfully to get the alleged footage of the shooting, and they've not released that at all. And they said that they won't release it or any other information other than what they've given me. And this false scenario resulted in a Joint Terrorism Task Force officer, and we're going and confronting the individuals who are federal, city, and state government officials who have been, we've known, I would say, speaking for myself, since I got involved with this sort of deep level politics in 2001, 2002. It's the same folks over and over again. Federal Reserve Bank Police of Richmond, Virginia State Capitol Police, Department of Homeland Security, Secret Service. And these are some of the folks that were directing the Occupy movement. And I'm talking about the worldwide Occupy movement when I talk in specifics about those agencies I just named. It's well beyond them, Army intelligence included, but that they go into great detail, and they have crisis actors out there. There's employees of G4S Security, which was located less than a mile away from from where this event took place, and we saw some scary stuff out there too, like those FEMA buses. They were out there, and I mean, it was an event that had lots of different components and lots of different individuals, but it was a lot of the same operatives that are funded by the Tides Foundation, the Rockefeller Family Fund, have ties to the Workers' World Party, international communism, and they're pushing, obviously, the Zionist, Marxist, Bolshevik agenda.
You also had a chief of police pointing at you and kind of not brandishing his firearm, but kind of like tapping at it and kind of harassing you and egging you on a little bit, huh?
Well, that's a guy called Alfred Durham, and he came from Washington, D.C. He's FBI agent, United States Marine Corps. So a lot of these things obviously this is really the only place folks like you and I can talk, because the audience is sophisticated enough to get these references when we can talk about references to, every police officer in the United States over the rank of a sergeant has been trained by, the FBI in Northern Virginia, Quantico. And these guys are all federalized. And Durham, basically, he's a criminal and he's called out for his crimes. And when I go on, sometimes I'll go on Press TV and I'll call him out personally when I start talking about the criminal police, the occupying army in the United States that is the stormtroopers for the Zionist occupied government, and that's what is called the police, the city-state federal police and so-called law enforcement, who do nothing but violate the law. But Durham has been instrumental in the past in attempts on my life, multiple abductions, and when I catch him doing this sort of thing, the individuals who call him chief, erasing the video and leaving a footprint and all covering them up, he's just kind of a pawn of obviously we know that somebody like him can be nothing but a pawn to the real power, to the bar association muckety mucks here in the capital, Virginia, or the billionaires. But he basically is one of their armed leaders, and he belongs in jail. And yeah, of course, he's threatened to kill me. They've abducted me. They've disappeared me. That's been I shouldn't say widely covered, because it wasn't widely covered, but my abduction last year, and that was a part of the Jade Helm operation, was covered by the media. It happened. It was covered up, and it's pretty shocking. Basically, all I can do at this point is videotape everything and call these folks out when they're doing it, because we can't back down. Folks like Alfred Durham, I put that out on video, and several days later, I get a knock on my door, and the Richmond police are making some sort of statement, because obviously they can't make anything but false statements, that I'm threatening this guy, Alfred Durham. And that's basically how it goes. These criminal police and government agents carry out terrorist activities, assault, you name it. I mean, I could go down the list, but we don't have time to go into all that stuff now. Chris,
I've had an incident before where I was picking up my daughter and with my wife at the time, and I had a warrant for my arrest. What the warrant was for, I had a Good Humor ice cream truck business. I had 10 trucks, whatever. And I was personally driving a truck one night, and I was selling ice cream beyond 8 o'clock. I had my amplified music, your common ice cream truck music, sure, and I did not have a garbage can in my truck. So I was written like 7 citations, went to court, had all of them but 3 dropped. And I believe I mentioned the 3 that I ended up getting convicted on. They were all city ordinances. I paid the fine over at the circuit clerk before the court date. So I assumed that I didn't have to go to the court date since I paid the fine ahead of time. And I was driving down a country road, was followed for almost a couple miles before they finally caught up with me. They must have used a license plate reader and finally found information about my warrant and decided to pursue me 10 minutes later. And they caught up with me. And a second squad came. The female cop brought me to the back of the car. I was arrested, cuffed. The male officer getting aggressive, threw my baseball cap on. Welcome, everybody. This is Circus Maximus, and I'm your host, Nick Spero. And it is August 19th, 2016. Welcome to Renegade Broadcasting. Tonight, I have a man called Chris Dorsey. Welcome back to Renegade.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor and a pleasure to be on with you, Nick. I really appreciate it.
I actually wanted to have you on much sooner, but Kyle beat me to the punch. So I wanted to have a little space in between inviting you back onto the network. It's a pleasure having you on. And there's so much to talk about. You've put out so many different videos since the last time you were on Renegade. I'd like to get into some of those that you've put out recently. I know that you were at a Black Lives Matter event in Virginia. And could you talk about that incident and how that went?
Yes, absolutely. So basically, we just have our antenna up around here. When we take action, as I said, I'm called Chris Dorsey, and under the law, I'm a man, and I'm one of the people. So, we have an intelligence network here, and we operate under the laws of the Constitution for Virginia, which states that the militia is the number one law enforcement and military arm. So we have an intelligence arm. So we're watching the criminals that run the United States government and all of their military mind war actions. And we found out that there was a Black Lives Matter rally, and that was in corroboration with, obviously, the police were directing it, and this was Department of Homeland Security, and of course George Soros funded it. But it was also involving the SEIU, which is the largest trade union in the United States. And basically it was a rally and a march down Monument Avenue, which is known for the monuments to Confederate war heroes. And it was a Black Lives Matter march, and the event and rally took place at the base of the monument for Robert E. Lee. So we know that George Soros funds this Black Lives Matter movement, and it goes even beyond George Soros because there's, an entire intelligence apparatus and going down to even the minutia of blocking off streets and giving overtime to the police officers who are directing all of these events. It was a stage psyop. Obviously, we know that they're pushing this race war agenda, and they're demoralizing the American people in general, but specifically European Americans, and demonizing them. And this was a complete Bolshevik operation, and the videos show a lot more because basically
the car grabbed my arm and pulled my arm and pulled my shoulder at the same time to where I actually ended up separating my shoulder. And I kept pulling my arm away because he was trying to hurt me. And he ended up pepper spraying me, his partner, my wife, and my wife ended up getting arrested as well for obstruction of justice. Everything ended up getting dropped later because they had it on camera. So I ended up, I didn't even go to court. Thought I was going to have a warrant, never ended up having a warrant. They just dismissed the whole case anyway. So yeah, I know what it's like to be abused by police myself. So with this chief of police that you've been having issues with, and abductions and harassment and violence and threats, You also mentioned that there was a staged false flag that I kind of skimmed over and didn't even think of it, that Greyhound incident over in Virginia on April 1st of this year. Can you talk a little bit about how you exposed that to where that created a lot of hostility in your community?
Well, yeah, I think maybe we can talk about that in terms of patterns. When we see these patterns in these false, and I don't want to get in, they say, oh, if somebody says it's a false flag, oh, it's not a false flag, it's a hoax. Okay, so I'll say orchestrated, staged events, by the government.
Sure.
So to be clear, so obviously I got a heads up that there was a alleged shooting at the Richmond Greyhound bus station, and the first reports were, of course, there was a live drill going on, and then varying different reports started coming out. So again, when we start talking about the staged hoax pattern, number one, of course, that we catch on is initial reports and subsequent reports being contradictory and continuously changing.
Yes.
And so we started noticing them. So basically I just was like, yep, the vehicle is, needs a little repair. So I just jumped on my bike, borrowed a camera from one of my associates, Glenn, and rode the bike down there and knew that it would be very easy to show that this was a complete hoax and fake. And I just want to point this out. I am always speaking to another individual smarter than myself. And tonight I get a rare opportunity to say it much smarter on a lot of different levels, but on at least one level, I'm always, when I'm talking to those cops, I mean, they're smarter than me in their particular protocol of what they have to do to violate the law, violate the civil rights,